this is what people don't understand. Those people that are ignored on the streets in tents, shooting up whatever they're shooting up, wait until it be. By the way, I think people need to know this. The Illuminists were the ones that created the word, the globalist zombies. And zombies are all those who are left on the top of the surface. They had all their secret bunkers, bases, underground, deep underground military bases. And those are, in their world, you're expendable. So it doesn't matter if they use, bioweapons, nuclear weapons, weather warfare, if they generate earthquakes. By the way, they can do that. So all this stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, if salvation, forgive me, if faith is not faith in preparing and providing for your family, then God sanctions suicide, and I know of no case where that's sanctioned. So, no one carries it through to their to the ultimate conclusion. Let's talk about shortwaves, Bob, because shortwave radios are the only way, outside of unless you got, megabucks, you've got your satellite uplinks, downlinks, you've got all kinds of ways of bouncing, private transmissions off of satellites, or you know how to basically break into the system, blah, blah, blah. But for the average person, what's, in your opinion, the best entry-level shortwave radio? If I don't ask you this, I'm going to have to answer an email. So please go slow, name the model number, and tell why it's the best.
Well, again, it's graduated. I mean, for most people who want to spend something, the Bofang F8 radio, it's an AM, FM. It has AM, FM, so you can listen to normal AM, FM. It has UHF, VHF. Those are the ham frequencies, the 145 and 440 megahertz. Those are important to have. It also has NOAA on there, and you can actually use GRMS and MERS. Now, I would never use GMRS or MERS, but I will tell you this. You go out and look in these boxes, and it says 30 miles on a GMRS or MERS radio. That is...
Now, first of all, whoa. Tell people what GMRS is.
Those are the citizens band ones that when you go down to the Walmart and you buy a pair of walkie-talkies, they're either GMRS or MERS frequencies. MERS is 151 megahertz, and GRMS is, I think, in the 460 megahertz.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10's the best, what are these, 2s? 1.
Because the box will say 30 miles, but you're going to get a half a mile at best. Now, that can play into your advantage, because if I'm monitoring, again, you got that Intel guy, if he's monitoring radio frequencies and those transmit a half a mile, and I hear people on the radio, what does that just told me? I have people with electronic equipment a half a mile or closer. That is so important to note that, and then write down everything you hear. Now, again, even though there's been a proliferation of Bofang radios in the last couple of years, and the FCC's cracking down on them, so if you want to get one, you might want to get it soon.
Spell it, Bob. Spell it.
BAOFBNG. And it's F8, Foxtrot 8. It will be the only way to communicate, Steve. Now, people ask me, well, how far will it communicate? Radio communication works on something called line of sight. It's going to go from point A to B. If you live in North Dakota and it's flat, that's great. You're going to get maybe 10, 12 miles, maybe 15. And forgive me for the flat earthers out there, but if you, that's why another thing, 30 miles doesn't work. If you're in North Dakota and you walk 17 miles away from you, you've gone over the curvature of the earth. So if radio works on line of sight, that doesn't work. So if they're talking 30 miles, maybe in space, but you're not going to ever get that on planet Earth. Never. I challenge anybody to go out and try it, and you'll never get anywhere near 30 miles. If you live in hilly, mountainous, or place of trees, buildings, whatever, you're going to get a mile, half a mile. That's all you're going to get out of that radio. So unless you hit a repeater, now, unfortunately, a lot of repeaters are on battery backup, and this is why, again, it's important to become familiar in that intelligence gathering thing with your ham radio club in your local area, because you might have 5 people in that club that have a collective 100 years experience using radio. Do you know the learning curve you can escape by talking to them? It's critical, and you can usually join a ham radio club for $20. Now, when I go there, I wouldn't go there and say, hey, I'm Mr. Prepper, I'm preparing for doomsday, can you give me all the secrets how to survive? No, you go there and listen. One of the things I learned about intelligence gathering is, Steve, I like to talk. And if you're trying to get intelligence out of somebody, you're not being paid to talk, you're being paid to listen. And
that's a really good point, and I, like I said, you need to know the question to ask. You need to listen to the answers that are given.
You ask one question, and as long as they're talking, you let them talk. When they stop, you ask another question. And again, so if you go to a ham radio club, you just listen, ask a couple questions, and listen to people. Take notes and listen. My guess is you're going to find a fellow prepper there, and if time goes by and you feel a little more comfortable doing the flashcards thing, each one showing a little bit each time, then you might break the ice and mention something. But until that time, be very guarded. Just listen and learn. And again, there's a collective experience of learning at every ham radio club that you're not going to find anywhere else. And most of those guys that go there are more than glad to show you how to program radios and everything. One of the things that's, again, the guy bought them and stick them in the closet and uses it when I need it. You have to program ham radio frequencies. There's offset frequencies. It works on what's called simplex, not duplex. So if I'm talking out on 145, I can't receive on 145. So you have to program that offset in there. There might be a carrier tone. Now, there's a program called Chirps, like a bird, Chirps. At chirps.com, you can download it free. It's freeware. You need a programming cable, but it makes it so much easier to program your radios with Chirps and that rather than doing it with that little bitty keypad, which I can barely do. It frustrates me. I can just plug it into my computer and program the radios. Now, I can do it if I have to. And again, I want to say something, Steve. There's things I'm not going to say on the radio. And I'll blow my own horn a little bit here. I do not charge for consultation. A lot of people do, $100, $200 an hour. If you have questions on radio, I can tell you more off the air than I can on the air. And so tomorrow, you can always feel free to give me a call. I won't give you any pressure to buy something, but I'll give you some tips on how to do things. Another thing that you can do is you're picking up what's called HF, high frequency. That's another means of communication, and that's above the UHF, VHF. Once I go to HF, I can communicate globally, which I have. I've talked to people on every corner of this planet from my little radio and teleco planes. Because of the lower frequency, the way physics work, the longer the antenna to pick up that longer wavelength. So you can actually just take a piece of any kind of wire and just connect it to that antenna on that radio and just stretch it out 20, 30, 40, 50 feet. And because it's a long wave, you're going to pick up much, much better frequency. And it is directional. So you might have to play with it a little bit and turn the wire different directions to find out, because wavelengths are directional, and you can do that. There are things out there, Steve. This is the one thing. We sell a thing called an elk antenna. It's called a mini Yagi antenna. It collapses. It's military grade, so I can unscrew it. The Yagi antenna is like what you used to have if you're old enough to remember that the thing outside the house with all those different size elements. This antenna, I carry it with me everywhere because it's handheld. I can screw the elements on so the whole thing collapses. And because radio signals are directional, guess what I can do with that antenna? If somebody's transmitting, I can locate them. And, I'll be glad to tell people how to do that. But you can locate people talking. And, again, this is what goes back to intelligence gathering. If you have people using radio in your area, you want to take a sneak and peek. You want to know what they're about. They might be good. You might be able to network with them, but then again, they might not be good, and you'll want to deal with them before they start dealing with you. So, a Yagi antenna is a directional antenna. You can do that, but for that Bofang, for your communication back and forth, which you have to have it. I'm going to say this: you will die without it, because you're not going to be Rambo. People are going to find you, and when they find you, and you've stayed up, we're not all Steve Quayle. We don't stay up 24 hours a day. Forgive me, Steve. I just know your schedule. You do stay up all
No, man. That's a fair statement, and God knows, one of the scriptures is I asked the Lord about it. I said, Lord, you said in your word, and by the way, I always get, you self-appointed watchman, hey, I want to say something. North Carolina, they have a great statement. When you see a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there on its own power. I didn't call myself to this, and I basically have been doing what God called me to do with the Joseph's ministry. And the thing is that Bob, isn't it interesting? People will spend more time berating those of us who are trying to help people, because of course you're just doing it to scare people to make money. But the point is that they never realize something. Maybe they should shut up and just listen. Say, I hate the the guy, but at least I need to know what he knows, and people say, why do you give so much time to critics? Because that's who people who are beginning preppers listen to when they go out, and all they hear is the constant crap, I mean, come on, people, you're talking to people that have been in the prep business for a long time, and I'm one of the guys that really hit it out of the ballpark starting it. So not starting it from its initiation phase. And one guy said, well, I never heard of you. And I said, well, hey, that makes two of us. I never heard of you. So the point being is that, catalogs and everything I've done in 9,000 hours, it's all been about trying to help people. And I know the time, Bob, is very short. I want to make this clear. The time is very, very short. And it's interesting. You've heard me say this. No word of God spoken by man of God or a person who God has given anything to is ever received by the people of God at the time it's given. People believe God and they had to wait 700 years for it to be fulfilled. Some cases longer, some cases shorter. But nowadays, good night. It's the instant coffee generation. If you say something on Monday and it doesn't happen on Tuesday, you're a false prophet. Well, first of all, very few people I know, and I've never done it. I'm not a prophet. I'm not. Never said I was, never claimed to be. But here's the deal. We're talking about communications. Communications is everything. I maintain without a shortwave radio, tell me if I'm right, Bob, that people are going to go into almost a convoluted state of panic because they're not going to have any way or any form or any ability to know what's going on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a couple case in points. Again, we're going to go back to two things. Area of operation. This is why it's important to use your radios ahead of time, and you get those 7.5-minute maps, and you go this direction, that direction, that direction, this direction with somebody else, practicing with your ham radio, knowing how far it will really transmit. That gives you an area of operation. Now, if you have somebody on the fringe of that, that's another miles away, you can actually relay information. Again, this is why it's important to develop that network ahead of time. But, yeah, how many of us have had loved ones and all of a sudden it's either thundering, raining outside, or something's going wrong and they're not home? You called them on their cell phone and they haven't answered, and all of a sudden what happens? Panic sets in. Oh, my God, are they okay? Are they okay? Is everything okay? And how relieved we are when all of a sudden the wife calls, or the son calls, the daughter calls, and say, hey, you were blowing my phone up. What's up? And they're like, oh, gosh, thank you for calling. I feel so much better knowing you're okay. What do you think it's going to be like when you have roving demonic bands out there, people desperate, and you can't get in touch with those that you're going to have to rely on? Now, in the best of circumstances, your wife's a couple hours late and it's raining in panic. What's it going to be like in that situation? Communication, Steve, not only being able to listen. Listening is critically important. That's where the shortwave radio comes in, because you can listen. But being able to network together with those that you care about and that are on your team, being able to organize and direct and talk about what is happening. You might have a threat, and you might all need to come together and defend against